we have Mindy today from Monument Title. She's been doing a bunch of our transactions lately, and we're super happy with the team and everything that goes on over there. So naturally, we pull people in that we want to share to do trainings, right? Title's super exciting, isn't it?
I like title.
Are you guys like totally jazzed? I know title people like title.
Yes.
Agents,
Not
not so much, but they need to know who to call,
Yes.
right? So a lot of the things that we have instructors in here on is like, hey, take notes, learn it, know enough to be able to have a conversation with your
Yes.
clients, but then direct them to that person and who to call.
Use your resources.
For sure. So let me screen share. You can step right over in here. Are you good standing?
Yeah, no, I'm totally good.
I get too much nervous energy, as I said. So let me share the screen. Okay, guys. Mindy, take it away.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm super excited. This is my first in-person presentation, like since before COVID.
That's so crazy.
So I'm so excited to see people and their smiling faces. It's nice. So I'm Mindy Blackburn. I'm with Monument Title. I've been in the industry for 23 years. I love it. It is a quirky field and I think it's exciting. So 9 of those years were in Colorado. The remainder's been here. Most of my time has been with Monument Title, and the owner is wonderful. We are a small boutique title company, which I think helps because I don't have to cut through a bunch of red tape to get a straight answer. So if you've got a quirky file or something weird that's going on and we're like, it's totally fine to close it, but you've got a couple extra hoops, that's where a boutique title company comes in, because you don't have to call the underwriter in California and the underwriter in New York, and you don't have to get it all. I have one phone call to the owner. He calls our partner underwriter, and I have an approval super quick. So that's beneficial. Let's see, I can just roll this, yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So title insurance, it's a policy that protects your investment and your property rights. So how do let me close this. Can I close this little bar? Perfect.
Yep.
Okay. When a property is financed, bought or sold, a record of that transaction is generally filed in public archives. So that's when you guys hear that, hey, we're waiting for it to record, we're in line right now. That's when it's posting at the county. So when the county posts it to public record, that's what we're talking about. Likewise, record of other events that may affect the ownership of a property, like liens, levies, things like that, are also archived. So we've got some items that we always pull from public records. So on the court docket, we'll pull anything that's applicable to the property on the court docket. So that's where like IRS liens are, tax liens, state liens, ORS judgments, those are a big one, that all have to be addressed and paid for. I know Lynn had said at one point, you guys had bought a property early on and there were a bunch of tax liens that popped up. So when you work with a title company, that's what we're looking for. We're digging into the trenches. We're looking for all these problems so that we can solve them before closing. And we disclose to the buyer and seller, this is what it looks like. This is what you're getting into. And we can make sure that the buyer gets the property free and clear of any debts, liens, encumbrances. And if there's something that pops up after the fact, that's why you've got that owner's policy to ensure their ownership in the property. So when you buy title insurance for your property, a title company searches these records to find and remedy, if possible, several types of ownership issues, kind of like what I just mentioned. A title company searches public records to determine the property's ownership status and insurability of the title. So let's say you've got a lot and you think you have access to it because there's this dirt road that's been there for like 35 years, but you're landlocked. Do you really have access to your property? Can you really get a truck on that property? Probably not. Is there an easement? Is there a right of way? Do you know? No, that's why you call a title company. And we can help you with that and make sure that your buyer has access to the property, or the seller can provide access or prove that they have public access to that property. If you don't use a title company, there's no way you're not going to know. And then if you're using that dirt road from the neighbor, they may not like the new owner and they may kind of give you some pushback. We've actually had that.
So how do you find, well, you can't find unrecorded easements because you just can't find them. So I bought a property once in Salt Lake. A previous owner owned 3 houses next to each other. The easement was recorded on house number 1. I bought house number 3, and right of way went right down my driveway, through the backyard, across the other backyard to this house so we could park off the street.
And they didn't notate it on the properties.
No.
Okay, so here's what we would do. At that point, I would call the seller and I would say, what do you know about your property? How have you been accessing the property? How have your neighbors been accessing their property? And that would give me a clue that there's something going on. And so then my title guys would actually search the properties neighboring those to see if we can find an easement that would apply to your property, but maybe was incorrectly posted or incorrectly recorded. And we would try to get that fixed before closing. So what did you guys do?
We found out after.
Oh,
We found out after, well, we found out about it, and then one day my tenant calls and he's like, dude, there's somebody in a loader in my yard, like grading our grass and spreading gravel and stuff. He was like, on our property, just, it's like, if you have a right of way, you can go over, but you can't change my property, right? So it's still there.
interesting. Yeah, we try to find those things before you get to that point. We try to reach out to the sellers. We try to, if needed, we've had actually our title people go inspect the property, and they'll talk to neighbors and just say, hey, we're at the title company, we're just kind of doing a search, we're walking the lines, just to kind of see what they can find out. And a lot of times neighbors are more friendly to title guys sometimes than buyers, sellers, or real estate agents, depending on what their feelings are. So we definitely, if you know there's something going on or you've heard something's going on, we kind of dig. We definitely push. All right. Two types of policies that are issued. We always issue an owner's policy and a lender's policy. An owner's policy is issued to the buyer on a purchase transaction and ensures their ownership rights to the property. Policy is traditionally paid for by the seller and is in place for the duration of that buyer's ownership. So in Utah on the Reissue, it's designated that the seller will provide one to the buyer. It is not required by law. Of course, in title, we recommend that you get one, but also we see all the scary sides. What happens if you don't get an owner's policy, and what happens? The owner's policy can offer insurance against various kinds of claims or clouds on title. Some examples are relatives or heirs with superseding claims, fraud or misrepresentation, liens, easements, IRS claims, forgery, clerical errors. So recently, we had a file that closed. The husband had passed away. Husband and wife were on title. They were not on title as joint tenants. They were just no vesting, not tenants in common. In Utah, if you were not on title as husband and wife or as joint tenants, it defaults to tenants in common. So in order to sell his ownership rights in the property, they had to go to probate. The problem is all of the deeds of trust, since they've owned the property, which was for over 25 years, all vested, husband and wife as joint tenants. So we call the county. We're like, hey, how do you want to address this? All of their deeds of trust say their husband and wife as joint tenants, but vesting wasn't on the deed they acquired title with. Person they talked to, the county said, no worries, you're okay. Have her sign out, do an affidavit of death, you're covered. Well, 2 months down the road, when they're doing audits, they called back and said, just kidding, that's not what we want you to do. So that's where the owner's policy comes in place. I actually have an attorney that I work with that does just probate stuff. So I called him and I said, I have a probate case, we're in an emergency, we need to get this done right away. And he had it done in 10 days, which this was last year during COVID. So if you guys know anything, that is crazy good. He has lots of good karma because he got that stuff done quick. But that's where your title insurance comes in place. And if they hadn't had an owner's policy, it would have been like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. You have to address this yourself as a buyer. You're going to pay for all of those court costs and fees and all the coordination. So an owner's policy really does pay off. Clerical errors, we see this every so often. Depending on the county, some of them a little more particular than others. If you have like an apostrophe in the wrong place, or if you add an S in the legal description, or you don't spell south out all the way, some of them will bounce your deed and say it's a clerical error. So then you have to get the deed re-signed, orange deed, trust deed, quitclaim deed, by the appropriate party, and you have to send it to re-recording. Owner's policy, again, kind of comes into play and takes care of those items. If you do not get an owner's policy, we record it as an accommodation, kind of like we're doing you a favor, but we won't fix any of those errors because we don't issue a policy. We don't have anything to fall back on. So again, that would be on the buyer to take care of that. Owner's policy also covers potential legal fees and court costs for settling claims covered by the policy. Let's say you had prior owner IRS claim, and then you don't find out about it for a couple of years. You're the buyer, you get all these levies and notices, and you're like, oh my goodness, what do I do? Well, you have to go to court for that. So that's when the title company steps in. We pay the premiums, we pay the attorney. Doesn't cost you anything. We take care of it because the owner's policy covers any of those items that may have been unforeseeable, like an IRS claim if they didn't file their levy in time. Owner's policy premium is based on the sales price and quoted at the title insurance company's filed rates. So all title companies have filed rates with the State Insurance Commission. We're all pretty darn close. So if you are looking for a quote, really truly, we're all within $15 to $25 of each other. So if you ever have questions on that, like if you think someone's quoting you high, even if you guys don't close with me, you can call me and I will tell you. I'll be like, I think that's a little off. What premium are they quoting you? What's your sales price? And I can kind of let you know
I
where
got
you're
a
at.
question.
Yes.
Since you mentioned that
Mhm.
it's off of the purchase price,
Yes.
what if somebody bought their house in like 2012
Okay.
for like 200 and now it's
Mhm.
worth 600? Is that even worth adjusting or changing?
So you can get what's called a reissue rate on an owner's policy if you close within the last 2 years. So if you have purchased the property within 2 years, you can get a reissue rate. And it's a percentage basis, but if they bought it that long ago,
So it
There's
becomes a
no-
new policy.
a brand new policy. Yeah, so you can't transfer a policy from an owner's policy from one person to another. It's that, so like, let's say you guys bought a property in 2000 and you've owned it since then, that owner's policy is in place for the entire time you own the property. And let's just say you sell it to Chase. Chase has to buy a new policy.
Right.
So,
Right.
but yeah, 2 years, and you have to provide the owner's policy that was issued from whoever it came from, and then you do get a reissue rate. But again, it's based on what the sales price was then, what the sales price is now, and then the timing.
So you could do it after 2 years, but it's just not the reissue, right? You just pay the full
You just get
price.
you pay full price for new policy.
Okay, so on that note, I have to mention one other thing. It has nothing to do with title, so sorry. But on insurance, we've been investing for like 30 years and having 2 claims on our insurance ever. So we had a fire in one of our properties and we had bought the property decades ago. We were underinsured. The rebuild cost did not cover rebuilding the house. We were about 80 grand short. So if you own property for a long period of time, you know, have those kind of discussions with your insurance agent and have them readdress your portfolio. I felt like that was his responsibility in representing me as my insurance agent, that he would audit the files once in a while, especially in an appreciating market. No, that falls on us, so.
So Allstate does do that now. It's a new program they offer. They will every year, every 12 months, on the anniversary of your policy, they will, of course, auto renew. But they'll reassess
Right.
the property values and see where you're at, and they'll automatically increase it, but you have to sign up for it. I don't know any other insurance agency that does that, but I know that
Well,
Allstate does.
because you're in good hands with them.
There you go, right? See? That's a good plug. Do you know someone who works at Allstate?
I got a guy.
Sponsored by Allstate.
Right? Very funny. Okay, lender's policy is the other policy that's issued. So lender's policy is required by the lender and only protects the lender's financial interests. So if you purchase a property and an owner's policy is not issued, that buyer has 0 coverage. That lender's policy only protects the lender. Traditionally, the buyer pays for the policy. Of course, this is all Utah-based. Every state's a little different. I also do Nevada, so if you guys do Nevada work, I am happy to answer questions or help. They're set up a little differently than what we are here. Lender's policy premium is based on the loan amount and quoted at the title insurance company's filed rate. Same as the owner's policy, we all have filed rates. If you are doing a refinance, you automatically get a refinance rate if you have a current mortgage on the property. So that's considerably less than a normal lender's policy amount. Every title company issues that. Lender's policy does not offer any protection to the homeowner or the buyer, which I kind of already said. So good there. Does anybody have any questions so far? Am I talking too fast? know
I
we
have
get
a
on
question.
call and then I
I
slow
have a
down.
question.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Kathy from Spokane, Washington. And what, if I understood you right just now, what you're saying, because I bought my house 3 years ago for like 267, and Spokane's market here has just appreciated astronomically. So what you're saying is that if my house is now considered under RPR valuation to be like 375 to 398,000, that I should call my insurance company and get up my or increase my homeowner's insurance in some case something happens?
At
Is that
least
what-
make a phone, I would say make a phone call, Jeff.
Okay,
She's
because I'm
the
sure it's
homeowner.
only insured up to like 300, maybe for the price we paid for it, you know, the loan was
Yeah.
279, so I'm sure it's only insured up to that at least.
Kathy, just call your insurance agent based on what you think the value is as a real estate
Okay.
agent and just ask
Okay.
him what your rebuild coverage is and just have a conversation with him and then ask if that's something that he, well, like Allstate or whatever. I doubt he does that automatically, so you would have to
Yeah, I have
initiate that
nation-
conversation.
Yeah, I have nationwide, so, okay, so yeah, I will do that then. Thank you so much.
Okay, owner's policy, the buyer is protected against certain undiscovered errors in title. So unforeseeable claims, some of the items that are unforeseeable claims can be forgery. So if someone's making false documents, the seller misrepresents the identity of the person who sold the property. So let's say someone passed away, and then the person that comes in and realizes that this homeowner passed away and they've gone through probate and they're pretending to be this person's personal representative. So their son or a relative that's a personal representative, and they're signing as a personal representative. They've got fake identification. Those are all false documents. If you have an owner's policy, we go to court. We address the issue. We take care of it. We make sure that your home is in place and your interest is taken care of in the property. Fraud, deception to achieve unfair gain. So let's say if you are trying to think what's a good one, or if we've had one recently that we've had to deal with underwriting. So if someone, same thing, kind of if they steal your identity and sells your property without you knowing, which in Utah, we haven't had that happen in quite some time, but we have had somebody take out second mortgages and walk away with the money. This has not happened to me. It actually happened to my mom about 15 years ago, and she had that happen. Somebody came to closing and she kept asking them, you have a home equity? And they're like, no, we paid that off. We paid that off. Well, they did pay their home equity off and they closed it, but somebody else had pretended to be them and took out a home equity, and they had no idea. This person had taken a draw and they had been making the minimum interest only payments. So they didn't realize that, right? I was like, that's actually pretty good that they even made payments on it so they didn't get caught, but they had been making draws every so often, and it had been several years, and it was an older couple. So anyway, my mom took care of it. I'd have to ask her, I don't remember exactly what she did, but if you find that after closing, an owner's policy would take care of that. So you wouldn't have a loss. You wouldn't be out anything. It's the title company that would cover that with our coverage through the owner's policy. Clerical errors, so inconsistent paperwork or historical records. So that's kind of like what I was saying. If there's a typographical error, or if somebody's not on title correctly, or they're deeded out incorrectly, their name's misspelled, we want to make sure that is addressed appropriately so the county doesn't bounce the deeds. And so if you're going to sell your property, you are the actual correct person that's on title. And we do see that often, that somebody will come into closing, or we'll call them and we'll get their, hey, I need your payoff information. What's your social security number? How do you spell your name? And we'll see 2 or 3 people on title, and they're like, I bought this like 5 years ago. That is who I bought it from. Why are they still on title? That's when the owner's title insurance policy comes in if we need to make a claim. We also will call the title company that handled their transaction when they acquired it, and we'll let them know, hey, there's an issue. Your deed was bounced. See what records you have, and then let's get it fixed. So we try to address all these things before we get to closing. And then if we find them afterwards, again, owner's title insurance policy kicks in. That's what we take care of. That's our job. We also want to make sure that all of the historical records at the county buildings are true and correct. Because if you have something that's not posted appropriately, or it's misposted on someone else's property, that causes a huge problem for that person on that other property, because how many people live in Salt Lake County alone? So if my deed of trust is posted on Jeff's property, he doesn't know me from Adam. He doesn't know where I'm from. He doesn't know where to find me. How is he going to track me down to try to get that addressed and taken care of? Unforeseeable discrepancies in the property or fence lines can cause confusion in ownership. So if we can see that the fence line is exactly where it's supposed to be, or if you have a survey done and the survey gets submitted and we issue it with the owner's policy, we will give you survey coverage, but the survey has to be submitted. A lot of people in Utah don't submit a survey. It's not required. Every once in a while we'll see them. Most of the time it's up in Park City because the lines are so off. Another thing to think about with items like this, if you are in an older neighborhood and you can see that the fence has been there from the inception of the property, 20 plus years, most people look at that as being grandfathered in. So if nobody's raised a stink about it, nobody's said anything, that fence has been there at least 20 years, it's kind of grandfathered in unless you do a survey and then you're changing ownership. Then you can kind of shuffle things up a little bit, but it's not a hard fast rule either. There is some wiggle room as to what people want to see or what the neighbors are willing to do if there's a fence issue. which I think you had that issue. Mhm. Okay, we don't cover crazy neighbors. I wish. But even if somebody, like, let's say somebody's tree grows in your yard and the fence runs right down the middle, your property line is right in the middle, you have every right to slice that tree up in the middle and cut everything off that's on your property, because top to bottom, that's yours. That's your line. That's what you own. But again, it depends on how much do you want to help your neighbor, right? Like, right, unknown title issues. Outstanding mortgages and judgments or a lien against the property. So that's kind of tying in if something's posted or recorded against the wrong property, the wrong parcel, the wrong name, things like that. Tax liens, ORS liens, state entity liens. A lot of times we'll see with tax liens or state entity liens, they'll send them to the county to record, but there's no legal description, there's no parcel number, and it's a name like John Smith. So then we're trying to track down who the state entity is. We need to get their social security number, date of birth. We're going to call and get all of that cleared up and taken care of. And then again, if those things pop up after the policy has been issued, we'll cover those items too. If an unknown heir of a previous owner who is claiming ownership of the property shows up, and we have to go to probate, which I kind of touched on. So if you guys have somebody that needs to go to probate, if you need a referral, I have a wonderful attorney that is all he does is probate cases. Super quick, very affordable, happy to share his information. If there's a prior owner and we have to do quiet title action, foreclosure action, or divorce discrepancies, if any of those items come into place after your buyer has closed on the property and an owner's policy has been issued, again, this is what we cover. This is our job. This is what we do. We take care of all the fees, costs, and everything to address these issues. We actually have had to do quiet title action on a handful of times within the last year. Are you guys familiar with quiet title? No? Okay. It's interesting. So it's if somebody has either died or is completely unlocatable, and we can see that there's some proof that there was intent to remove them from the property, or there was intent to sell the property, but we can't find them. You can't locate them. You have exhausted every single search. You hire an attorney and you go to court and you have a quiet title action issued. So you file a motion, you submit all of your documentation for all the search that you've done. You prove that either they've been deceased or completely unlocatable, and then they'll issue a quiet title action. And in that case, instead of having a seller deed over like we traditionally see, the court actually deeds from that owner directly to your buyer, and that's called quiet title action. So it's a little interesting. You see them every once in a while. It's not very common. Also foreclosure action. You guys all know what foreclosure is. If you see that, like, let's say your buyer closes on the property and they're getting all these foreclosure notices from one or two buyers before them, they're like, what is going on? I bought this property. I don't know why I'm getting this. We actually had this happen once. It was many years ago when HUD was super big right after the market crash. There was a gentleman who did not buy an owner's policy. And when you purchase property from HUD, if you want an owner's policy, you have to provide it for yourself. You pay for it yourself. He didn't want an owner's policy. He didn't think he needed it. Two buyers before him who had owned the property, had sold it, did not pay off a hard money lender. And so now he was coming back to be paid in full. That buyer had to pay him because he didn't buy an owner's policy for coverage. It was valid, he did own it.
On the flip side, I sold a property to one of my investors and he made one payment and he's getting notice of default. And he's like, don't I have to miss 3? And I only made 1. He's like, what is going on here? And it was two owners back, just like this scenario, had a private money note for like $125,000 that apparently never got paid off. And so they filed notice of default on the property once they saw that it changed ownership. But the cool thing was he had owner's insurance and it was one phone call to the title company and he was done.
And we take
somebody wrote a check, but it wasn't him.
But that's why you pay for an owner's policy. Like, if for nothing else, it's a peace of mind that if something pops up, you call the title company and we take care of it. That's our job. Divorce discrepancies. We see those every once in a while. If there's a divorce party coming to closing and their divorce decree isn't final, but they agree on proceeds or how they're to be split, as long as we get it in writing, that's what we follow. We have seen where an ex-spouse has come back and said, I didn't sign that, I didn't agree to that. And we're like, yes, you did. We have it notarized. I notarized it. I saw you in person. And if they file a claim against the property claiming that they should have gotten more, we take care of that too. That's what the owner policy covers. Okay, top 10 reasons why we need title insurance. Protection versus total loss. So a fire could destroy a home, but leave the land intact. A defective title may take away not only the house, but also the land. So again, peace of mind. Fraud and forgery. Deed or mortgage signed without proper authority. A deed or mortgage in the chain of title that was forged, or if someone used a power of attorney for a deceased party, which you guys probably all know you cannot use a power of attorney for a deceased party. Some people try to do that, and it's not allowed. If you've got someone that is selling a property out of an LLC and they're giving the representation that they have the authority to sign, or they've made up their own authority and attached it to the LLC, but they don't have the authority to sign, title insurance covers that too. Duty to defend. Title insurance provides the buyer with a defense in court against any litigation involving any alleged title defect, lien, or encumbrance covered by the policy. Coverage up to policy limits. It covers defect in document execution and recording. So errors in recording documents or execution, notary, legal descriptions, typos, things like that. Preservation of land records. Title insurance is based on a reasonable search of title, which is the process of searching title for every transaction, preserves and protects the integrity of our land records. Again, we want to make sure that the county records are true and correct. So when you're buying or selling a property, you know that the title report that you're getting is true and correct based on the information that's available to us. We want to make sure that your buyer knows exactly what they're walking into and the seller knows what has been recorded on their property, especially if something's not applicable or isn't correct. We want to make sure we get that taken care of. An owner's policy is in place for the duration of a buyer's ownership. Clause on title. Title companies work to discover and disclose relatives or heirs with superseding claims, liens, easements, IRS claims, state tax liens, judgments, and clerical errors. Those are all the things we definitely kind of dig in and look for. You guys may or may not know about this one. So in Alta 107.9, it's an endorsement. It can be issued. It is a fee. If you're adding another party on title with the current buyer, and then you don't lose any of your owner's policy coverage. For example, a wife is buying a property, the husband is not alone for whatever reason, it's fine, but they want to add him on title. If you just have the title company do a deed to add him on title so their husband and wife as joint tenants, they're going to lose half of their title insurance coverage. So anything that comes up after that, any claims, that buyer is going to be responsible to pay for half of the attorney's costs and fees. If you want to deed the property from yourself individually into an LLC or an S Corp or something like that, same thing. You want to ask for this Alta 107.9. Any title company can issue it to you. Traditionally, it's 10% of the owner's policy premium. Most title companies are pretty on board with that. And that's what the fee will be. You don't have to pay it at closing. It is something that can be issued after closing when that deed is being recorded. Without title insurance, the buyer bears all the risk of loss from title disputes after closing. And title insurance can help provide additional detailed information to a potential buyer by disclosing all applicable public information regarding a specific property in one concise report.
Quick question on that. I walked away, you probably said it.
You're okay.
What are some situations, you know, how you mentioned adding somebody to,
So
what are some
107.9.
situations where somebody's like putting in their entity or whatever, where they
Yes.
would lose their policy?
Yes.
Did you?
Yep. So no, you're good. If you're adding someone on title with you, like a spouse or a friend or a family member, you absolutely want that endorsement, because if not, you lose half of your owner's policy coverage. So then it's only going to cover 50%. If you're deeding into an LLC, you absolutely want that endorsement, because you would lose 100% of your owner's policy coverage.
So you can't just go down and record your own quick claim or
You
special
can.
warranty. I know you can, you shouldn't.
You should not. No.
But,
So, and like I said, it does not have to be done at closing. Like, let's say 6 months, a year down the road, you want to add somebody on, you're moving to your LLC, call the title company you worked with and just say, I want to do this. Can I have this endorsement and tell me how much it is? And everybody's like, absolutely, let me help you with that. If you are deeding it from yourself individually into your trust and you are a trustee of the trust, you do not need that endorsement. They look at that as the same beneficiary individually and your trust. So that's the only time you wouldn't really need it. So one thing that we like to do on my team is for the escrow officer to review and summarize the title report with you and your buyer or your seller. I know you guys have so much on your plate and you have so many moving parts and lots of deals all going on, so you're going in 100 different directions. We find that it's super helpful if you just have the buyer or the seller call us if they have any questions. And I do this all the time. I am super happy to walk them through how everything works. And I know the title report can sometimes be confusing. They're like, what am I looking at? What is this? And how does this apply to me? I love going through it, even with new real estate agents, happy to walk you guys through it and just tell the buyer, this is what you're looking at. Or something else that we do when we send all the title work out to agents, we always do a bullet point. Like there's one deed of trust, taxes have been paid, or hey, there's 3 tax liens, we're addressing them. Just so you guys can have a snapshot. This is what the title report looks like. This is what's being addressed. And then if you want to follow up, you absolutely follow up. And then we take care of it all. Then we follow up with you guys. No worries, it's done, it's addressed. Check your boxes, move on. And then just a quick summary. So Schedule A, it's really just a summary of buyers, vested owner, property address, parcel number, legal description. So you want to look at that and make sure that the names and the parcel number and the address match what's on your rep sheet. If not, that's when a lot of the lenders have some issues and they kind of give us some pushback, like what's the address? Why is the parcel not matching? Things like that. Schedule B Part 2. This is the part that you guys really want to look at. So it has all the pertinent public record information concerning buyers and vested owners and property. So CC&Rs, easements, any right-of-ways, property taxes, judgments, liens, and deeds of trust.
So if you don't look at anything else, that's the section you're looking at.
Absolutely, it's for sure.
Yeah.
Schedule B Part 2. And then if you guys ever have any questions, call your title person. That's what we're here for. We love being a resource for you guys and just being like in a supporting role. That's what makes us all successful.
If you see something unique in that Schedule B Part 2, do you just send it over to the realtor that ordered it, or do you actually let them know something's going on there?
Both.
they should pay attention to?
Both. We'll email it over with all the other title documents, but we'll have absolutely a bullet point and it's like in bold that there's an issue. And depending on how, like if it's something that I can fix, we'll let them know. Hey, we're working on this, no problems, we'll address it, we'll keep you updated. If it's a serious problem or it's gonna be time consuming or it's something that I think is a little scary, I will just make a phone call. Because then we're all on the same page and then you guys aren't sending it out to everybody to look at. So at least we can have a game plan or a timeline of how we're gonna address it. I don't think surprises are always good. So I'd rather make a phone call and have that than
You
have a
know, and
bunch of
that's
panic.
super helpful to have somebody that's so patient and willing to do that, because we never should be giving our opinion on what they should or should not do. So what do you think? You know, they're always asking you, well, what'd you do? Or what do you think? I'm always looking at the PR and I'm going through it, looking for anything that like is a red flag to me, but I'm not saying, oh, there's nothing to worry about. I can't say that to my client. And then something comes up, it's like, they're not even gonna go to you, they're gonna come back on me.
Right, because you're the one that represented them.
So
you work
any
with them.
questions have to go to them.
And really, truly, whoever you work with, that's what we're here for. We're here to help you and your clients, and we're here to help you look good and make sure that you get repeat business. Do you guys have any other questions?
I do, but I'll give somebody else.
Okay, well, it was a pleasure.
No, I was serious, I do.
Yeah, okay, for real.
Okay,
I
so.
thought you were teasing me.
No, I wanted to give somebody else a chance though, because talk about building permits.
So building permits are a little scary right now. I don't know if anybody's getting them very quickly. I heard, don't know if this is true, they might be putting a moratorium on them for a hot minute, but that's all just kind of hearsay, the things we're picking up from the county.
Okay, what
Is that
about,
what you're asking?
no, what about,
Okay.
so we're showing a property to a client, it's got this detached garage and the owner built it or whatever, and he didn't pull permits.
Okay, if the county had an inspector look at it, if somebody's reported it or there's an issue or a problem, it will absolutely be on the PR. It'll be noticed as a notice of non-compliance, and there's gonna be a requirement that they get a building permit and approval through the county.
That'll show up on time. Well, what if there's no non-compliance?
So if there's no non-compliance, we're not gonna know that it's an issue. But if it becomes an issue, you call us, and that's where the owner's policy comes in.
Okay, let me get more specific. We
Is this a
want-
property that I need to know about?
No, not yet.
I'm like,
So we're always encouraging our clients to do due diligence and check things out. Oftentimes, I'm calling, checking on building permits. They want to know this and that. The minute we do though, now we know about it.
right, and then we have to all
Are you
disclose
saying
it.
we shouldn't encourage our clients to investigate permits on
I'm not.
questionable additions?
Off the record, of course.
Right, thank you, Mr. Allstate.
Yes, yes. Let me stop the recording real quick.
Right? Right. So honestly, that question makes me super uncomfortable because I don't know that there's a right answer, right? Like, Some buyers want to do their due diligence and they want to call the county, and I have told buyers, absolutely call the county, or I've called them for them, or I've called building and planning, I've called zoning. I guess it depends on, so technically, yes, we probably should call and we should do the due diligence, so they know.
We
they're
should,
not
I
gonna
just know of a circumstance where the garage was built too close to the boundary line setback. They found out after closing or whatever, title moved it over 4 feet,
Yes,
their coverage, up to their coverage limits.
Yeah.
But had he investigated before, title wouldn't have covered that.
absolutely, because
Because
it
he
would have
would've
been
known about it.
disclosed,
So then he, well, not that you shouldn't do due diligence stuff, like she's saying, but now it becomes an issue, we gotta deal with the owner.
Mhm.
We gotta get a reduction, we gotta get the
Mhm.
owner to pay for that to be moved.
Mhm.
Now we know this is gonna be an issue and we don't have any
You
insurance.
actually could get, if it's been, like, how long was it there? Was it there 20 years? 20 years or more, pretty much grandfathered in. If those same owners have been there the whole time and nobody spoke up, nobody said anything,
Is that the benchmark 20?
20 years is usually, Salt Lake County for sure. Outlying counties, it depends on who you talk to and how they're feeling and what they had for lunch for the day. But Salt Lake County is usually pretty consistent with the 20-year grandfathered in rule. Mhm. We actually had, so Rob Luke just started here and I told him he should come. He didn't, so now I have to give him a really hard time that he didn't show up today. I don't know. Rob, if you're there, you're in trouble.
He was texting me right before class.
Yeah, he's great. You guys will love him. One of his properties we closed several years ago. And I think it was in South Jordan, if I'm not mistaken. Rob will remember. They were in a cul-de-sac. This house actually was built on the neighbor's lot, but the county gave them the building permit, the okay, passed it. They didn't have any problems with it. They just said, you're good. We're just gonna leave it. Foundation's already poured, check, move on. The problem is, when you look at the houses, they had a big, huge, the garages were here and they had this big, huge driveway. And so to get in this guy's garage, he had to go through the neighbor's driveway, and they were friends, so they didn't care, but then they both sold. So we actually had to get like a property line agreement, which we could do for a garage as well. And we just said it's grandfathered in. It's 20 years. The neighbors have been fine with it. Thank goodness the buyer for both properties, who closed within a handful of months of each other, were both okay with it, but it was complete disclosure. And we made him sign the property line agreement. We made him acknowledge it, and everything was fine. So that's an option that we can do. But I think that's really the only one I'd ever had like that. So
Cool.
hopefully that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I learned, correct me if I'm wrong, but insurance typically is to protect you from future problems, but title insurance protects you from previous.
You got it. Exactly. Title insurance is the only insurance that is for past events. All other insurance is future. Absolutely. Yeah.
This is what I.
See, you're excited about title insurance. I love it. Thank you.
Got you a clue out there, I'm sorry.
I like title. All of my kids have grown up in the title business, and at one point in time, they either worked for me or they were my intern. And so when I go home and I have, like, I'll take packages home to notarize, or I'll work at home, or I'll do things, they're all like, do you want me to do that package? I'm like, yes, I do. So they totally know, and now none of them will work for me anymore. Yeah. I'm like, I broke them.
Anybody else? Discussion, questions?
Yeah.
What's your average time frame
I-
on green title for listing?
24 hours. Unless it's a quirky, weird property in Park City or Juab County, who you cannot search online. You have to actually drive there. Yes,
Nice.
but mostly 24 hours. If it's super crazy busy, usually a day and a half, but we really try for 24 hours just because, you know, you guys, sometimes timelines are tight, especially within the last year. So timelines
Seller
have been.
disclosures are
Absolutely.
3 days.
Yeah, and if you get something, you're like, I need this by the end of the day, most of the time, I can get it to you by the end of the day.
That's a big one, guys. Like we're always telling our inspectors and our radon, you know, people that are doing test force due diligence when our deadline is, I gotta have the answer before that. You need to check with title too and say, this is my seller's disclosure deadline. Am I gonna have this? Because if you give it to them a day late, your seller's in default. Not that it necessarily would be enforced, but
Right.
they're in default of that
Well, if
contract.
somebody wants to push, that's a button to push.
For sure.
Yeah, I always tell, like, minties, you have 4 dates. First one's for the seller, the next 2 are for the buyer,
Mhm,
and the final one is for both.
mhm.
But when you're first starting out, you're thinking all 4 of those, when you're writing an offer, you're kind of thinking all 4 of those dates are mine as a buyer's agent.
Sure. Sure,
But they're not. So you gotta
Right.
think about that,
Mhm.
especially on the listing side, keep that over, because houses sell in 2 days and you listed it yesterday
Right.
Like,
You're like, I need that title
I
right
couldn't
now.
pay attention to that, so I just put it in my.
Right, well, and also, if there's any issues on title or with the seller, I love to know way in advance, because that gives us way more time to get payoffs or clearing, or if there's a problem, it gives me time to fix it. Something to note, just so you guys know, if you have any sellers that have USDA loans right now, if they're selling, USDA is running a 25 business day turnaround time on payoffs. Yeah.
Whoa.
So if you have someone, get your title company to order that payoff as soon as you have the listing. So the one I actually just got this morning, I literally jumped up. I was so excited. 25 days from the day they receipted it. And I requested it before they even had it under contract. So USDA completely crazy right now. VA to try to get loans in, and I don't know who you guys work with for lending, right? But VA in general is running on a 5 business day turnaround time delay. So when you think you're going to get it, add 5 days. That's kind of what we're seeing in the industry right now too.
So for our newer agents, what areas are USDA?
Good question. It depends. Some Eagle Mountain, some Saratoga, some Tooele. I don't know about Weber and Davis. Do you know, Lynn? If there's anything Weber and Davis, USDA?
So there was.
I don't know if there's anything left
I don't think
anymore.
they're-
Juab County, most of Juab County is.
yeah,
Nothing
they're
east
south
side.
too, though.
Yep. And USDA has interesting rules. Also, Utah Housing is running on a delay. So if you have any buyers that are buying with Utah Housing, they're a little delayed right now too, getting docs out for closing.
So basically, as soon as you get a listing agreement, you gotta send it to title. Don't-
Absolutely.
Not, I mean, some people connect it more with going under contract. So as soon as you get the listing agreement, even if like you still gotta do pictures, you gotta do this, it's like this one's coming up, this is when we're going active, whatever, gives.
Absolutely. You give it to your title company when you get the listing, then if there's problems, they can address the problems. Also, when you get it under contract, truly, that is like a 30-minute fix to add the buyer on and get you a new PR. So that is one more thing just to check off your list and be super quick to be done and move on for it. Thanks, guys. This was great.
We're clapping in here, but anybody online have any questions?
Yeah, this is Dave. I had a question on
Dave,
commercial.
it's taking me on vacation?
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Just
Dave.
let me know. We'll do a big party. Hey, on commercial, because I get involved a lot with commercial properties, and seems like, I'm looking at this one First American Title, these commitments for title insurance. It seems like I've read something in there that says, we're only liable for what is in the public record, and anything else, we're not. Is that, that seems like a cop out
It's
to me.
not quite accurate, but commercial definitely is a whole nother ballgame. It depends on what type of commercial policy they're issuing, what type of commercial property you're working on, what the terms are. So not necessarily all of the traditional primary residence rules apply to commercial. So title, we are subject to items even if they're unforeseeable. Like if something should have been caught or something was posted incorrectly, absolutely, that's what your owner's policy is for. That's what it covers. So if you've got a commercial deal that's going on right now, if you want to send me a copy of that policy, I would love to read through it and see exactly what they're telling you. And then I can look at the property and I can see if it's noted correctly or if they're just giving you like a blanket statement, just because that's what First American does.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's a blanket statement that they say.
So First American is huge, and there are some things about them that is super wonderful and I love. But First American farms all their title reports out to third-party companies, and a lot of the people aren't even here in the United States. So I think sometimes there's a disconnect and they fill in the blank or push a button. But yeah, that may be something on your commercial land policy that truly is applicable, but there's so many details that I don't know that I wouldn't be able to say for sure.
Great. Do you have an email address, Mindy?
Yes.
Hey, Sydney, sorry, I was gonna just say this. Sydney, can you go ahead and type her contact information into the chat if you can hear me, so that the ones on Zoom can have it and you can still tell them.
Thank
You got it.
It's Mindy, M-I-N-D-Y at monumenttitle.net.
So one of the things, and it has to do with what you were just talking about, Dave, that recommending to your clients, like when they say, oh, do you think I should get a mold test? Do you think I should get a meth test? Do you think I should do this? Obviously, you never say no, right? It's up to them based on whatever their comfort level is. But those exclusions and exemptions on the title are super important. She brought up surveys that hardly anybody does. But the wording says if it could have been discovered, if you had done a survey, they're not going to cover it. So
Yeah.
that's a judgment call for our clients on, do you want to put out there, especially if it's rural, right? You've got farmland, there are no fences, there aren't anything. Make sure they know that's their option, because they're always going to come back on you. It's like, why didn't you tell me that? Right?
Yeah. We had a really interesting experience up in Clearfield, right across from the city offices. We're building 125 unit apartment community. It had surveys, it had the title policy, everything. And they're out there digging the foundation, or, digging the excavation, and they run across fiber optic lines from CenturyLink. And it's like, what are these doing here? And they didn't show up on the title. They didn't show up on the survey. They were never recorded. There was, and so here we actually had to move the building and redesign the front one end of it just to get it out of the way of the fiber optics, because they were saying, we're not moving our lines. That's it,
Well,
so
I wonder
deal with
how
it.
long, like, how long had they been there? Who missed that at the city?
Yeah.
What is going on?
Yeah. Well, and it's
Crazy.
the Highway 89, I think, or Main Street, runs up there. And so it was a big, it cost us money to have to, move things and redesign the way the building
Absolutely.
was. So,
Absolutely.
but that was one that just slipped through the cracks, never got recorded, never showed up in the title or the survey.
The title, if it's not posted and the city didn't post anything, I get that, but the survey, I'm super surprised, even with the survey, that the surveyor didn't find it, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's crazy things.
It was a surprise.
See, and surprises are not good.
Yes, it was. So anyway, those things happen in reality,
Yes.
in real life.
Yes.